Before I start this video, I need to tell you all something important. My good friend Nadgey recently had his channel hacked and changed into a Bitcoin scam channel, which more recently has also been terminated. I have his second channel in the description. Please give him all the support you can and spread the message. Thank you. Ever since Tsubasa was released, I've heard most people say that she is infinitely better than Clair in every shape and form. As someone with profound experience of Clair, allow me to explain why this is not true. I'm going over 5 different categories: player phase, enemy phase, low dedication, high dedication, and miscellaneous. This one I'll actually have to give right off the bat to Tsubasa. Because of how inherently similar Clair and Tsubasa's stat spreads are, having an extra 6 passive for both attack and speed puts her above Clair in pure offensive strength, no questions asked. Her one flaw with this buff is the fact that someone has to move first, which means she can't be on the front lines in Ether Raid's defenses, like say a Reinhardt or other offensive sweepers would. However, this doesn't put her below Clair. It would make her essentially on par with her for this one specific instance. If you wanted to use her properly, you'd have to give her a rally dance setup, which in itself can potentially hinder your team in options. Either way, Tsubasa wins in the player phase category. Most of the Clairs I see will only run standard Swift Sparrow Dispo sets, which is why most people will say Tsubasa is generally better. However, Clair has one asset that makes her shine above Tsubasa: her res. One of the biggest arguments I will make in Clair's favor has to do with an inherent problem with Tsubasa's weapon. This is Tsubasa's weapon description. Do you see the problem? This little phrase right here: if unit initiates combat. When you look at Clair's Refine, she not only gets access to Flashing Blade, but also gets access to both phases. I emphasize her res because her refinement makes her, as I've shown in the past, a Dragon Slayer. It's definitely possible for Tsubasa to become 1-2 if she wanted, but Clair's little extra bit of res can definitely help with her kit. I won't sugarcoat it to be in Clair's favor. Tsubasa being introduced later gives her an extra 11 points of BST over Clair, which is absolutely huge in her favor. This stat difference is also part of the reason Clair utterly flops in comparison as a player phase unit outside of Gale Force sets, which in themselves are kinda niche and not always Clair's forte. Why, despite this horrible stat discrepancy, do I argue Clair is a better enemy phase? That, my friend, is all in the weapon effect. Tsubasa's effect lacks the enemy phase punch, but because of her dual effectiveness and flashing skill, Clair can tank mages and dragons, while charging backup specials she can use to heal herself. For units she outspeeds, Clair will usually be able to double without one-shotting, allowing her to charge up Ether in one round. Tsubasa may be faster and stronger, but without access to Flashing Blade, she fails much harder with DC sets that Clair can easily match with slot skills such as Bonds. Player phase Clair is generally worse Tsubasa, but enemy phase Tsubasa is generally worse Clair. That is why this category goes to Clair. If you don't want to spend too many feathers or orbs on them, Tsubasa as a character will generally be better base than Clair. Clair's base kit, outside of Romphia and her Refine, is laughable. Tsubasa comes pre-packaged with her weapon skill right from the get-go, and even if Blade Session isn't fantastic, it still serves her well base. Like player phase, Tsubasa wipes the floor with Clair in this category. Tsubasa with high dedication can become stupid fast. If you think Blade Session is a bad skill, she can use Swift Sparrow 4 for more consistent speed and attack. If you're willing to put in the effort, Tsubasa can serve you better than any other Lance Flyer, or really any flyer on player phase. However, Tsubasa's biggest flaw comes to the fact she's not a very tanky unit. To be fair, neither is Clair. Without dedication, that is. As I explained before, Clair excels much better than Tsubasa on enemy phase due to her Refine. So what about Heavy Blade as a Sacred Seal? If you want to put all sorts of love into her, why not throw that on her? Going back to the enemy phase argument, without access to other Sacred Seals that could benefit her, she's either forced into a rigid and not very tanky enemy phase set, unable to heal herself with skills as easily, or she just lacks the ability to counter mages altogether, which would make killing her infinitely easier for the opponent. Her attack also gets overshadowed by many units, so she's going to have a lot of trouble taking down foes without Distant Ward, which in itself is on one single seasonal unit as of this video. If Tsubasa could learn Flashing Blade, this might be a different story, but flyers outside of Clair and Seda cannot use it, period. Of course, I'm not going to just rephrase my first argument as an excuse for Clair being a better unit with dedication. Instead, I'll propose a question. What's the difference between an unmerged Tabarn and a +10 one? Stat increases and capability in his niche are definitely the first to come to mind. However, no matter what merge he's at, his enemy phase is still garbage. Does that mean Tabarn is a bad character? Of course not. Tabarn, no matter what merge he has, will struggle to be a good enemy phase unit, playing against his weapon's very intended purpose. Tabarn is amazing in his niche, but he cannot stray from it. Tsubasa does not break well from her niche either, even at higher merges. She becomes a phenomenal player phase unit and is one of the best lance units in the game for that role, but she just doesn't have the same enemy phase power. You may ask, why is this a problem? For someone to get a 5-star plus 10 unit without wailing, most people agree that it will take you usually about 1,000 to 1,500 orbs to get them fully merged. That takes a lot of time and dedication to do. It's not a bad thing to plus in who you want or a unit who works within a niche, but the problem is that units like Tabarn only get better at what they do, not better at handling their downsides. Clair not only gets better as a player phase unit, although not quite to Tsubasa's ability, but also improves in enemy phase kits and against her weaknesses. Her res makes her great at tanking and dealing with dragons and mages, her speed makes her doubling ability more and more consistent, and if you think she has too little attack, you can use her attack super boon like I do. Because she's also a 3 and 4-star unit, all she needs to become plus 10 is a lot of feathers which can be grinded for with hero merit, unlike orbs, which you can only get a slow, steady supply of over time, unless you're willing to blow money on this game. Tsubasa isn't nearly as worth it as Clair to merge up to plus 10. That is why this category goes to Clair. Right now, Clair and Tsubasa are tied for categories. Tsubasa being better as a low dedication player phase unit, and Clair being better as a high dedication unit who can also work on enemy phase. If I ended off here, I could say that Clair is on par with her, but I'm not done just yet. I've already explained the problems with Tsubasa's weapon, making it difficult for her to escape the player phase sweeper niche. Now, being in a niche isn't necessarily a bad thing, except the fact that her weapon also works completely against what she's trying to accomplish. As a fast player phase sweeper, you're most likely going to be the first unit to strike. Due to the fact that Tsubasa has to wait until another ally attacks, she's actually hindered by her weapon's condition in being a sweeper. She isn't useless without it, but the fact is, she has to do the exact opposite job of a sweeper to sweep at her best. If you manage to find a way to work around it, great, but the fact you have to arrange your team around her to take full advantage of her sweeping capability is more hindrance than helpful. Clair, on the other hand, can start sweeping right away, and can also perform well in enemy phase and take down units that rely on one phase or the other to work effectively. The reason I say that Clair is better than Tsubasa isn't because I think Tsubasa is a bad character, or that Clair is somehow a better sweeper than her. Even though Tsubasa has better stats, the weapon effect overall gives Clair much more options aside from a single niche. Tsubasa may have access to better stats, but she's not better as a plus 10 than she is unmerged. If you're going to put a huge amount of dedication into your unit, using it on a one-trick pony that gains nothing but stats from dedication will do you significantly less than a unit who can be an all-around attacker. This isn't just me stating ideas either. My Clair was the key to winning Lift's Abyssal map, and was able to take down OG Hectors back when she was unmerged. Even without the same stats, Clair just has much more potential, and less of a need for the situational setups that Tsubasa can need. That is why I believe Clair is better than Tsubasa. Thanks for watching.